America faces four serious deficits today. The first is a budget deficit. The second is a savings deficit. The third is a balance of payments deficit, of which the trade deficit is a subset. And the fourth and most serious of all is a leadership deficit.
How can this be happening to the richest country in the world?
Well, we've lost our way, quite frankly. Let me tell you how we got to where we are. In the last 40 years, we've had 35 budget deficits and only 5 budget surpluses. But remember, we've been running large annual surpluses in our Social Security program for years. These surpluses are spent every year to help pay other bills in the federal government. Without the Social Security surpluses, our real track record on deficits looks a whole lot worse.
This is something that's utterly unsustainable, and remember, all of that has happened before the baby boomers retire. And the baby boomers are not a projection. They're born, they're out there, they're going to be eligible for Social Security and Medicare, and yet we can't pay our bills now.
In less than 10 years, Social Security will be paying out more than it takes in, and will only get worse as baby boomers retire in larger and larger numbers. By 2017, Social Security will not be helping to reduce our overall deficit, it will be adding to it. Our enormous Medicare deficits and other federal spending that also lie ahead will only make this situation worse.
The only issue that's more severe than this would be the idea that an Islamic fundamentalist would get his hands on or her hands on a nuclear weapon and use it against us. Beyond that, there's nothing that's more severe than this. This issue represents the potential fiscal meltdown of this nation, and it absolutely guarantees, if it's not addressed, that our children will have less of a quality of life than we've had, that they will have a government they can't afford, and that we will be demanding so much of them in the area of taxes that they will not have the money to send their kids to college or buy that home or just live a good quality of life.
Did you know millions of Americans live with debt they cannot control? That's why I developed this unique new program for managing your debt. It's called Don't Buy Stuff You Cannot Afford.
Oh, let me see that. If you don't have any money, you should not buy anything. Sounds interesting.
Sounds confusing.
I don't know, honey. This makes a lot of sense. There's a whole section here on how to buy expensive things using money you save.
Give me that. And where would you get this saved money?
The concepts of sacrificing and building for a better tomorrow have been pushed aside by our live for today, easy credit, and consumption-oriented society. Many Americans have never seen a rainy day, and therefore simply choose not to save for one. This is a major problem because savings results in increased investment, additional research and development, a stronger economy, and an improvement in our overall standard of living. In 2007, China had the largest trade surplus in the world. And who was dead last? The United States of America. If you're buying more than you're selling, which is what a trade deficit is, eventually your trading partners are going to own a lot of your wealth. When they are not buying your goods and services with this money, they will be looking for ways to invest it. Running large and persistent trade imbalances can be problematic, especially when a country has a low savings rate and its government needs to borrow more money every year to pay its bills. Some people think that we can solve our financial problems by stopping fraud, waste, and abuse, or by canceling the Bush tax cuts, or by ending the war in Iraq. The truth is, we could do all three of these things, and we would not come close to solving our nation's fiscal challenges. Here's how bad our situation really is. We already have approximately $11 trillion in total liabilities, including public debt. To this amount, we need to add the current unfunded obligations for Social Security benefits of about $7 trillion. Then add Medicare's unfunded promises, $34 trillion, of which about $26 trillion relates to Medicare Parts A and B, and about $8 trillion relates to Medicare Part D. the new prescription drug benefit, which some claimed would save money in overall Medicare costs. Add another $1 trillion in miscellaneous items, and you get $53 trillion. Our country would need $53 trillion invested today, which is about $175,000 per person, to deliver on the government's obligations and promises. How much of this $53 trillion do we have? Zip. By the time today's college graduates are ready to retire, 40 years from now, the only things our government will be able to pay for are interest on the federal debt and some Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid benefits. All other parts of the federal government will be closed and out of business. What about taxes? We would have to raise federal tax burdens across the board, more than 2 times today's levels, to close the financing gap. Some politicians complain when any tax increases are mentioned. We're facing a more than doubling of federal taxes if we continue down our present path. Remember our debt to GDP? By the year 2040, our debt to GDP will be twice the record level at the end of World War II, and it skyrockets after that. Who's going to lend us money then? Our budget, savings, trade, and leadership deficits individually are bad enough, but in combination, they create a toxic mix that threatens our country's and our families' futures. As the baby boomers retire in large numbers, this tidal wave of spending will reach our shores, and we are simply not prepared for it. And trust me, it could swamp our ship of state. Unlike many other problems facing our country, this one is ours alone. We can and we must solve this one. The question is, when will we? As our nation's founders said, it's really up to us, we the people.